Hello, and welcome to the Uptick Protective Intelligence Podcast. I'm Fred Burton with the Uptick Center for Connected Intelligence. During my years as a counterterrorism agent with the U.S. State Department and time spent as a physical security expert in the private sector, I've seen it all and met many fascinating people along the way. This podcast series explores the riveting world of safety, security, and protection through conversations with leaders in the field. I'm Fred Burton, and now on to the podcast. Hi, I'm Fred Burton here today with Dr. Welton Chang. Welton is the co-founder and CEO of Pyrra Technologies, a threat intelligence company that scans unmoderated social media with AI. Most recently, he was the first technology officer at Human Rights First and founded HRF's Innovation Lab. Prior to joining HRF, Welton was a senior researcher at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, where he led teams and developed technical solutions to address disinformation and online propaganda. Welton served for nearly a decade as an intelligence officer at the Defense Intelligence Agency and in the Army, including 2 operational tours in Iraq and a tour in South Korea. Welton, welcome to the Uptick Protective Intelligence Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me today, Fred. It's an honor to be on.
Tell us a little bit about your company. What exactly does Pyrra do?
We're a threat intelligence company based in Washington, D.C. We help clients scan the alternative social media networks for threats, both reputational and physical. So we're going out to the smaller social media platforms that exist, bringing that data in and using AI to help our clients parse through it all.
I know you and I bumped into each other at a large security event, and I know you're in a space that's fascinating today, and you said something that kind of stuck with me, that the difference between what you do and other social media kind of monitoring companies. Could you explain a little bit about how you work your magic?
Yeah, and Fred, it was really nice to get to meet you in person. Your reputation certainly preceded you. And one of the things that I think we noticed while we started doing our research, this was Eric and I probably in the 2018, 2019 timeframe, when everyone was talking about disinformation and how it impacted the presidential election of 16. The landscape of smaller social media platforms, places like 4chan, 8kun, these are places where some of your listeners may have already heard of before. They were starting to explode at that point. Part of this was moderation taking place on the bigger platforms, Twitter and Facebook primarily, people being deplatformed from the larger ecosystems and seeking refuge in the smaller places where they can continue to have those social conversations, but basically face less scrutiny. And our focus as a company is on those spaces. And, unfortunately, these are places online where mass shooters have posted their manifestos previously, where folks have become radicalized over time by the content. And we saw a necessity to go after the content in these places because of the threats that we were seeing emerge out of these less moderated, almost unmoderated social conversations.
It's really kind of the new frontier in this space, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that more and more people are getting wise to it. Certainly when we start talking to potential clients, they usually have a familiarity with maybe one or two, a few of the spaces where we collect data from, like Telegram, for example. But the vast ecosystem, when we show them a slide that has all the logos of these places, when we show them our platform capabilities, we're pulling in content from 24 different places right now. That's when their eyes get opened and they look at that and they say, wow, I didn't even know all those sites existed. And that's the challenge, is just keeping up with the explosion of new places, that's a full-time job in and of itself. And we take that burden really off of um, analysts who have better things to do with their time. They're doing the hard work of putting the pieces together. Let the machine go and do the less glamorous work of data collection.
Yeah, that's simply amazing. And the evolution of technology and the time I've been in this space. I got into business in '81 when we were still working with typewriters and 3x5 index cards, Welton. So it's amazing for me to watch this progression over the years. Now, you've had a fascinating career, and I know you began as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Army. Help our listeners understand how you got into this space. I'm always amazed as to how folks get into our line of work.
Yeah, I wish I had a story for you that showed some kind of strategic plan for my career. I think one of the things when I get asked by students what they should be thinking about doing in the future, one of the things I try to emphasize to them is that um, sometimes you just move from place to place and you kind of cobble something together that resembles, in hindsight, something that makes a lot of sense. But looking forward, looking into the horizon, I don't know what I'll be doing. Say 5 years from now. I'm sure there are other people who have more of a long term plan, but I think for me, and I think this is also for the other folks in the company, especially my co-founders, Eric and Beck. It's really been about doing the thing that we think is going to matter the most right now. Back when I decided to join the military, it was obviously spurred by 9/11. I started college, I started ROTC in the aftermath of the, the Twin Towers attack. And at that stage, I had no idea that I was going to wind up in Iraq twice.
Mm.
And but that's just how the future unfolds. And at that point, I decided that it was going to be the best use of my efforts to go and join the military and serve the country. And I went to DIA after my time in the Army, and was heading into like 2014 timeframe, and decided that hey, maybe I could put my skills somewhere else, and decided to go get a PhD. But it's really been about trying to make the maximum amount of impact on an issue that is important. There's certainly other issues right now out there that are also important. This is just the one that we've set our sights on right now.
Looking back over your amazing career, Welton, what was the most interesting job you had in the military?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really um, in the military. I was a reservist at the time, but I was an active intel officer in the DIA, and I got asked to go deploy to Baghdad in 2011. So at this time, we were starting to withdraw from the country. And I remember, being at the one of the palaces when, at that point, Vice President Biden came to Iraq to meet with the Prime Minister and basically, um, you know, have a ceremony to solidify the fact that we were leaving the country. Um, but I was there because I was training Iraqi intelligence officers on how to do basically analysis, counterterrorism type analytic training. And it was not something that I could have foreseen myself doing after starting a career at DIA after the Army. But they needed somebody who had previous military training and could lead a team of folks to do that work. And it kind of fell in my lap to do that. So I would say that's probably one of the more unusual places I found myself. Just trying to make, and how difficult it is to teach Americans analysis.
Sure.
When we talk about the kind of rigorous standards that exist promulgated by ICDs now and being something that the D&I really focuses on, trying to export that kind of analytic training into a completely foreign culture, even one that I had been in before and experienced. It was not easy, and I'm not certain that any of our training even really stuck. So, I would consider that pretty interesting.
I would say so too. Now, did you just wake up one day and say, "Hey, I want to start a company"? And the reason I ask that, I've had the opportunity over the years to talk to many, many, many CEOs and founders of some of the world's largest companies, and I'm always amazed as to the ideas they have or the spark that clearly I don't have. But did you wake up one day and just say, "Hey, I want to start my own company"?
No, not at all. This was not on the roadmap, so to speak. I remember, so the company was incubated essentially by Human Rights First, where I was the first chief technology officer. This was right after I had spent a couple of years at Johns Hopkins doing research on building disinformation detection technology for the US government. And we were building essentially a giant hate speech detector inside of HRF to simplify things a little bit. And we saw the run up to the January 6th attacks on the Capitol. And in the aftermath of J6, I was asked by the board of Human Rights First if I'd be interested in spinning out, into a company, this technology that we had been building. They basically said, "Hey, it's all well and good that you're building this technology, sharing with other NGOs, but feels like the marketplace needs something like this because signals were missed in the lead up to Jan 6." And so we, I want to say that at that point I jumped at the opportunity. It was not like that at all. I mean, I told them and other people who were involved in the spin out, I said, why don't we go find a professional CEO to do this? I'm a CTO, I'm a technical person, I have a PhD. Let's find somebody who knows how to build and run a business and have them do it, because this doesn't feel like something that I should be doing. I think my wife was pregnant at the time, so I was thinking longer term of, hey, maybe shouldn't take such a risky step of doing a venture-backed startup. Considering I got a kid on the way, now I got two. And the more we looked at the challenge, the more we looked at what was going on and fleshed out how we would turn the technology into a business, the more it became apparent that, somebody at least somewhat technical needed to take the reins of the company. And so ultimately, I don't want to say reluctantly, but certainly, it wasn't without some level of reservation. I decided, hey, it should be me. I should step up to this challenge and do this. And along the way, it's not like this is me making decision on my own. Beck Jones, our COO, who you've met, Eric Kerwin, our CTO, all of their ideas came into this and really helped to crystallize the decision in my mind to go and pursue it. So we publicly launched the company December 2021, January 2022, and we've been at it ever since. So.
We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment, but first I wanted to tell you a little bit about Ontick's Center for Connected Intelligence. In the world of safety, security, and protection, we know that gathering and sharing information is crucial. That is why we created the Ontick Center for Connected Intelligence. The center is a hub for the ongoing exchange of security strategies and best practices, insights on current and past trends, and sharing valuable information through expert discussion and analysis. It's made up of seasoned experts across a wide range of disciplines. To find blogs, podcasts, webinars, white papers, and more, check out the center by visiting ontick.co/center. That's ontic.co/sinner. Now, I look at someone like you and I see a futurist. I see somebody that's looking over the horizon at threats coming at us from a multitude of different vectors. And as you look out over the horizon, what do you see coming at us that perhaps we're not ready for?
Yeah, I mean, the horizon's pretty scary. I think 2024 presents at least a range of possibilities that are all not very good, especially from a security standpoint. I think one of the biggest challenges that I see, and I'm going to put my psychology hat on for a second, is um, the truth has been contested for quite some time, especially online. Social media certainly plays a role in that. But one of the bigger challenges that's going to emerge from generative AI and that range of technologies, everyone's spinning up about, oh man, there's going to be deep fakes related to the election, and ChatGPT is going to be used to create disinformation, and it's going to flood the zone. I'm not as concerned about the content itself. What I am concerned about is the erosion of trust in actual evidence. When um, you can have a military intelligence organization, you can have a domestic, um, say you're the FBI or you're the CIA, and you reveal some hardcore piece of evidence that was very difficult to obtain, get it declassified. It bolsters a case for some national security decision. And the first thing that people jump to is that's fake. You made that. That was ChatGPT or that was Midjourney or some of these generative technologies. Um, that I think is an even bigger problem. And it's not necessarily technological. Certainly, technology is one of the reasons why we're encountering the problem. But really, it's about convincing and persuading people that something is real. And in the past, we would say things like, oh, picture tells 1,000 words. I think back to when Colin Powell, was in front of the UN and shaking a vial of, I think it was anthrax,
Yeah.
and showing classified, overhead imagery to the collective audience. And I remember seeing that as an undergrad in college, thinking, this is ironclad. He's making the case. He's showing us real stuff. I think that sort of presentation would be absolutely quaint for an audience today, because they would look at that stuff and go, "Oh, you just made that. A computer generated that. The computer generated the Iraqi intelligence officer intercepts. You made that audio. You made those pictures." And that, I think, is going to be one of the real challenges moving forward with this new range of generative technology that's out there. Not just detecting that it's fake, not just showing people that this is the source, but then coming back and convincing them that the actual thing is the truth and that the thing that they're seeing is not the truth. That is going to be the much more difficult thing that we have to deal with as a society.
Yeah, that's fascinating and in many ways very scary. When, I grew up with a generation of, when our government made a statement, for the most part, my father was World War II generation. You took it as gospel. And today, there's so much skepticism on any kind of report that comes out that you're absolutely spot on with that. So, how does a corporate security team today deal with that with a global workforce, whether it be disinformation about their company or statements attributed to, let's say, a CEO that perhaps aren't real? How do you get in front of this, Walton? What advice would you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real challenge. Um, One of the things that I remember, this was last year. There was a Fortune magazine reporter that came and asked me about this challenge, and one of the things that he, kind of the title of the piece that ultimately came out was "The Big Lie is Coming for You," and he's referring to companies um, that weaponized disinformation of the sorts that targeted companies this past year. And then, one of the first cases of this was Wayfair. That's the kind of thing that's going to be impacting security teams moving forward. I would say there's a few things. First is recognizing that, yes, you have a global workforce. Some of your folks that work inside your company are on these sites that we monitor. So there's a percentage of people in your workforce that is encountering this content on a regular basis. And some of the folks are being radicalized by it. Some of them are actively spreading disinformation, maybe even about the company that they work at, claiming that they have insider knowledge, claiming that they are, hey, I saw this up front and this is what I saw, right? And just kind of talking out of turn, really, about things that they shouldn't be talking about on these sites. So that's one of the first things to recognize, is that this is not just a outside the wire problem. This is also a challenge that's facing, and I hear this more and more from people that come to me. How do we reach, say, let's say you have mandatory DEI training. What if 15% of your workforce thinks that DEI is some kind of globalist conspiracy theory to, do something awful to people, right?
Right.
That's not your slideshow is not going to really work on 15% of your workforce, even if they click the buttons that says, I comply with this, right? I think the second thing is the speed at which these challenges can really become out of hand. So all it takes is one user on one of these platforms to say something, and the next thing you know, it's migrated out to a bunch of other sites. Maybe it came with some kind of meme, and you're getting asked by corporate leadership. You're getting asked maybe by maybe you're embedded in the GSOC. All of a sudden, there are signals coming across, and there's just a slew of content coming in, and you're not aware of it happening, right? And this doesn't usually happen overnight. It's too fast. Could take 72 hours, maybe a week, for something to go and spread that to that extent. But you have to be early to it. You have to be on these sites and looking at this content. That's what we really help our the teams that we work with do, is see those early indicators and be aware of what the chatter is on the places that are the less traveled for most of the civilian population. And then, I think the last thing I'll say is you really need to take a kind of coordinated approach to it, right? You say, hey, what if there was something falsely attributed to a CEO, for example? Well, as a security team, you may not be totally plugged into what the PR team is doing. But I think in a lot of ways, you increasingly have to be, because those are the things that are kind of coming back and potentially boomeranging in a lot of ways. So, but if you're on the same page, you can be prepared. Hey, the CEO is going to say something that might be controversial. That's, I think, one of the ways you can actually prepare yourself, posture yourself for something that's going to come down the pike, and then have your resources positioned so that you're not caught flat-footed, you're not behind the eight ball when something actually does pop off.
Well, that's very prudent advice, Welton. I greatly appreciate you sharing that for our listeners. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to say?
Just if folks are interested in getting in touch with us, Pyrra, Pyrra Tech.com. You can just find us. We do have a free weekly newsletter that we distribute. I think we have like close to 600 subscribers now. Started from zero. So it's on the website. You can come find it. And basically what we do is deliver to your inbox free of charge, kind of what's happening on the Fringe alternative networks, summarize some of the key narratives that you should be aware of, who's being targeted, that sort of thing. So yeah, if folks are interested, they can subscribe to that. And yeah, just, thanks for having me on. This was really nice, and hopefully I get to see you soon.
Give me that website again for our listeners to subscribe to your mail out.
Yeah, it's www.pyrra, Pyrra tech.com.
Well, thank you so much, Welton, for sharing your story and the great things you're doing with your company with us today.
Thank you, Fred. It was my pleasure.
This episode was brought to you by the Ontick Center for Connected Intelligence. Learn more at ontick.co/center. Again, that's ontick.co/center. It was produced by AJ McKeon. Our music is a track called Monteverdi Ride and was written by Brian Bristow and performed by Smokin' Novas. Check them out on Spotify. Please remember to rate and review our podcast on iTunes and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions, we'd love to hear them. You can reach us at podcasts@ontick.co or visit ontick.co/center for more information. Thanks for listening.